Thomas Aquinas is one of the greatest philosophers and theologians of all time, maybe the greatest, but he was very humble. And he was not only humble, he was a mystic. And there's a story that demonstrates his humility and mysticism and his greatness all in one fell swoop. And it's kind of a charming story, but it demonstrates this. So he had a secretary, an assistant, Friar Reginald. So Reginald would be helping him and be closely associated with him. But at night, he was hearing voices in Thomas's room. And he would ask Thomas, "Who's in your room? What's going on?" And Thomas would never answer him. He just would not. And so this really got to Friar Reginald. And so he goes to the superior and he says, "You know, Thomas, there's voices in there. I hear him repeatedly. He won't tell me who's in there. Under pain of obedience, make him tell us who is in the room with him." And so under obedience, Thomas was made to tell who was in his room. And in his room were saints, Peter and Paul, explaining mysteries of the scriptures, things that Thomas didn't understand. And we wonder, with this highly mystical life and this connection with the Lord and this purity of humility, yeah, that explains why he had the insights that he did. I want to give you an idea of his nature from his early years. And here's another story that I think, this one almost makes you want to cry. It's so sweet. But he's in a classroom full of boys, and they decide they're going to play a prank on him. So they go to the window and they look out and they say, "There's pigs flying outside. Thomas, there's pigs flying outside." And so Thomas runs to the window to see the flying pigs. And then, of course, the joke is on him. Everybody laughs at him and all that. And he turns around and he says this, and this will strike your heart. He says, "I would rather believe that pigs can fly than that my brothers would lie to me." This gives you an insight to this prodigy. So he came from a very wealthy family, and they had designs for him. They knew that he was cut from a different cloth, highly intelligent. They saw to his education at the Benedictine monastery at Monte Cassino, and they had in mind that he would be the abbot there. That was revered, it was prestigious, that was the place for him. And his high intellect, everything was a done deal as far as the family was concerned. But remember, he had a great humility. And the Dominican order was rather new at that time, and they were mendicant, which meant that they had to beg for their living, for their food and everything. But they preached and they went out among the people. They didn't hide behind monastery walls. And he wanted to be a Dominican, and they were greatly opposed to it. So much so that they locked him in a castle, and they bribed him, and they did everything to change his mind, and they absolutely could not. And so he ends up becoming a Dominican. To give you an idea of this giant intellect, at the height of his career, he had several scribes. He'd be writing the Summa Theologica, which is a big 5-volume exploration of who is God and who is man in creation. He was doing biblical commentaries. He was writing to bishops and other scholars. He had debates and answers he had to give. So he had many projects going on at once. So what he would do is this is how it would go. Let's say he had 5 scribes. He'd give a sentence or two or a paragraph to one scribe, and that scribe would get busy on that subject. Then scribe number 2, he'd give the next sentences, and then on to 3 for the third project, 4, 5 different projects. By the time he got done giving his dictation to those 5 scribes, the first one would be done, and he'd pick up where he left off. And this is how he was able to be very efficient. They say that all what he did and wrote, you'd need 5 lifetimes to do it. but he did it in one. And I thought about this. This is an interesting thing. We talk about working to our strengths. Think about this. If his superior had said, Thomas, you need to get that handwriting under control. And once you can write legibly, then you can begin writing. What if he had said that? That we would never have anything from Thomas Aquinas. His handwriting was atrocious. He couldn't get it under control. Think about it. He's got so much going on in his head that a hand cannot write at the speed of a brain. Now, my handwriting can get really sloppy at the speed of my pea brain. Imagine his, where he can have multiple thoughts going simultaneously. He could have never done it. And what a tragedy that would have been. Oh yeah, a lesson in obedience, that's good for you. But see, so that is a thing. Now, all of us have to do the things that aren't our strength to a minimum degree. We really do. If you are a talented painter and that's where your gifts lie and you should be painting and making the world a better place through your art, and then you have a child and they need their diaper changed, well, you got to change the diaper, right? But within reason. But this is evidence of the fruit from supporting the gifts of someone, the God-given gifts. Okay, so there's a story. Thomas was a mystic and he was humble and he was really close to God. How could you get those insights if you weren't, And he went into the chapel to pray, and he was praying before the crucifix, as always. And there are reports. People saw him levitate when he would pray in the chapel before the crucifix. Like he was so in union with God that he wouldn't know somebody came into the room or was watching him. But on this occasion, I don't know if he levitated or not. I don't know if it was a common occurrence, but he was in deep prayer. And the crucifix, Jesus on the crucifix began to speak to him and asked him a question. And this is what Jesus asked him. You have written well of me, Thomas. What reward would you have for your labor? And Thomas was overwhelmed and so grateful. And this was his answer. Nothing but you, Lord, only you. That was a magnificent answer. Could have had anything. Jesus Christ was saying, what do you want for your reward? A new library. He could have made an institution, or it's just all kinds of things that somebody who was highly academic might want. He asked just for Jesus, which is everything. Remember, I told you that Thomas was a mystic. So he had this connection. There's so much. What we know is just what people caught. They happened to walk in on him or see. But we know that, there had to be a lot more that wasn't seen by others because he was very private. Like nobody would have ever known that he was conversing with Peter and Paul if Reginald hadn't made sure that the Father Superior had ordered his obedience to tell who was in the room with him. So there's so much, but he does have a mystical experience and he tries to tell Reginald about it in so many words. And this was towards the end of his life. So his greatest work, the Summa Theologica, is coming close to being done. I mean, most of it's done. And he has this experience of the Lord. And then he just quits writing. He just quits. And of course, Reginald, Friar Reginald wants to know, what's going on? Why did you quit? What's going on? And Thomas tells him this. He tells him he had a mystical experience. And he says, Reginald, I can do no more. Such secrets have been revealed to me that all I have written now appears to be of little value, as so much straw. So when he asked Jesus, all I want is you, I think Jesus is showing him some of it. People who have near-death experiences tell us that they can't even put it into words. Thomas Aquinas couldn't put it into words, his experience of God. And it made what he did on this earth seem like nothing. And yet, Jesus appreciated it. He said to him, "You have written well of me." And Thomas decides it's straw, because now what I've seen is just straw, like he's overwhelmed. I don't think he's sinning when he quit. He was just overwhelmed. And I hope that he has touched you. I hope that you will befriend Thomas, the angelic doctor of the church. St. Thomas Aquinas, pray for us.